So I'm going to kind of start this off with an overview. So the idea here is either like they're talking to you about a ministry and you haven't submitted anything yet, or this has been talked about for 5 years and no one's ever gone forward with a plan. And so now, you're going to try to put this together, or somebody there is going to try to put this together, and you're going to submit it to get it approved. Okay. So, for, an overview, what we want to do first is we want to gain the interest from leadership and potentially get approval. So we want to gain or get interest and potentially approval from leadership first. So here's what I don't want to do. This comes up as an idea. I don't want to go out to a group of people in the church and go, we're going to start a security ministry. You'll be a part of this, for two reasons. Number one, if it hasn't been approved, it may not happen. So you're wasting, you're wasting valuable time and resources already, because it's your time and it's your resources, and it may be somebody else's. One, so it hasn't been approved. And then number two, churches are like any other organization. A lot of times you start talking about something and you don't share it with leadership first. It gets back to leadership before you can get to them. That can happen. And if you started asking people and started planning this before you've even got approval, or gained entry from, or gained interest from the leadership, you might cut yourself out of this. So go to them first, potentially gain approval for this, because they plan projects and objectives. And if you go to them with a plan or a project, they're going to appreciate it. Okay, I'm not saying they're going to approve it, but I'm going to tell you, if you go to them first with this plan and lay it out the way that I'm going to show you, they're going to appreciate it, and there's a better chance they're going to approve it if you go and you do this and you try to get people to get it and they hear about it through a back door. Okay, so a project plan, it's not like anything complicated, I promise. A lot of you guys on here know me. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, a former police officer, and a security director. And so I'm not very smart. And so, but I can do a project plan. And so this is necessary for us to get things approved. And so this is nothing more than a formal document that defines goals and objectives. So this can be a Word document. It can be a PowerPoint presentation or keynote presentation that you take to church leadership to show them what this looks like, what the goals are, what the objectives are, and how you're going to meet it. That's all this is. So it doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have a bunch of Excel spreadsheets in it. It can be like a PowerPoint, or it can be on a flip chart. But you just need to put it together and organize it so they can understand what the goals are and objectives are. So meet with them first. Just a brief overview. Meet with leadership first. Discuss the plan. Okay. You're going to know right away. They'll tell you what they think about it. Fellowship, when we started this almost 6 years ago, when I got here and kicked it off, what happened, there was a staff member here that got this started that went through the same process. In fact, before we got the team started, I communicated with him for about 90 days, and I walked him through this, and his comment was, oh yeah, this is a project plan. I'm like, absolutely, this is the way we get this approved. And so, same thing, again, you want to kind of follow a process similar to this to get this done. Before that, we had some folks, as we got this approved and I started having interest meetings, which we're going to talk about, there was somebody that came on that came to one of the interest meetings that got mad, that never joined the security ministry. And the reason for that was because 5 years prior to, he went to the church and said, hey, I'm a former special forces guy. We need to have a security element. I'll go ahead and get, handgun training together and we'll get this thing started. The church said, no, we're not doing that. And so, the person got upset when this thing finally kicked off and got started. But we, number one, they were ready for it. And number two, we had a plan already laid out to show them what the goals and objectives were. All right. So they will appreciate this. Any questions on that? Okay. This is still the same thing like leadership. Here's what the ministry planning looks like. This is an overview for what we're going to talk about. Number one, the ministry has to meet a true need. And listen, sometimes a security need ain't enough, folks. Somebody tell me what a ministry is. Come on, somebody tell me. Somebody tell me what a ministry is. There's no wrong answer. You guys.
Ministry is just service.
Oh. Yeah, Perry, you're right. Exactly. Service.
Meeting a need.
Yep, meeting a need. What else? Somebody said outreach?
Yeah, outreach.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, anything to further the kingdom of Jesus Christ is a ministry. That's it. Like something to further the kingdom in service and outreach, absolutely, because we are furthering the cause for the kingdom by serving the church and outreach. That is a ministry. And so, number one, the way the church looks at this when they start looking for approval process is, number one, we have to prove in the basic ministry planning that this meets a true need. Physical protection will not always catch their eye. Like, that may not get the approval. We have to come at this as a ministry. So it's not just, providing security for the church. There has to be some other things on the other end of this. And so some value-added services, the outreach part of it, the service part of it, all that needs to be explained. So the ministry has to meet a true need, number one. That's the part of the planning process. Number two, our ministry must align with the church's strategy. Okay? So if the church, if you're going to be the leader, or if you're going to be the guy or the gal that comes up with this idea, it's a good idea to keep up with what the church is doing and understand what their strategy is. Now, here's all of our strategy as a church, right? So spread the good news of Jesus Christ. It's get the believers in the door and get out there in the world and also spread the good news. That's a general strategy, obviously. That is our mission. But churches, whether it's every year, whatever, they will have some sort of a church strategy, okay? And so they'll have a strategy, and they'll announce that in service, and they'll announce that with the staff. And so anyway, make sure it meets a true need, and make sure that you understand what the church's strategy is, and that this ministry aligns with that somehow, okay? It's just like a corporate objective. Like, every year, I worked for big corporations for a long time, and every year when I work for those corporations, to get bonuses or to get money or to get, resources, what happens is goals and objectives, like a strategy, is pushed down from the top. And then at some point, the VP, whoever I answer to, like, he's going to give me, or she will give me those objectives. And based on that, I'll look at those. And based off those objectives, I'll spin off my own team's objectives based on the organization strategy. That's exactly what this ministry is. We're just aligning with the strategy. We're just coming up with a different goal and objective that actually meets the overall strategy for the church. Number three, appoint someone to lead this team or lead this ministry. You got to appoint some kind of a leader. Without leadership, without somebody to answer to, it won't work, and we're going to get into that. Okay? Develop the plan. Okay? So put the plan together. PowerPoint presentation, keynote. Go to Starbucks and go get a legal pad and just write it down with a pen. But start to develop what this plan is going to look like. Okay? Then, and I'll get into all this, budget development. The church needs to know how much this is going to cost. And again, we're going to talk about this, but budget development for the ministry is a big part of what this looks like. All right? And then we're going to get into communicating and evaluating. That is, communicate this to leadership. You may, at some point have to communicate this to the body. You're going to communicate this to the interested team members or ministry members. And then you're going to go through an evaluation process in the beginning, as this thing gets started. Once it gets started, your boots on the ground, and then, at some process throughout the year, there should be some evaluation also. So, got to meet a need. It's got to align with church's strategy. You got to appoint leadership to run this thing. You got to develop the plan. There's got to be budget development, so they know what the resources are going to look like, how much they're going to spend, and you got to communicate and evaluate this thing. Okay?
Michael?
Yes.
So in the initial stages, which board person would you recommend presenting that to? Or presenting proposal to?
Yeah, so it really just depends on, that depends on the size of the church. Like here, Fellowship's a huge church. There was like an operations pastor. And so that's who that was, in the beginning, that's who that was, that's who we ended up, giving this to in the beginning. because it's an operations or like a facilities function. So really, it just depends on the size of the church. And like, when you're talking about your leadership team, really who's doing what. And so, I would look at, again, I don't know the size of the church, but somebody that has to do with operations, like facility, like the facility itself, that would be the person this would go to, because that's probably who, that's the most likely bucket it's going to fit into. So it really just depends on the size of the church. But yeah, it's got to do with operations, whoever's running that.
Okay. And the leadership?
I'm sorry, say again?
I just was going to one B part was the appoint leadership. Is that a phase, or is that still in the initial phase of the proposal?
Oh yeah, I'll go through it. So this is just this is kind of the first kind of bullet point. I'll show you where that's at in the plan. This is just kind of, as we go through this, I just want to show you guys what basic ministry planning looks like. So now, appoint leadership is, that's going to be. So that depends. If you come up with this and you want to be a leader, you've already done it, right? And so, so if that's the case, it doesn't matter. But if you're not going to be the person that leads it, it's probably like the third or fourth step down, and I'll show you what that looks like as we go into the presentation.
Yep.